My name is Marlo. I'm 46, and I live with my son in a small house tucked deep in the shaded suburbs of Asheville, North Carolina. The trees here lean in like old friends, and the quiet feels like an old sweater, worn but comforting. I work as a nurse. It's a tough job, demanding and often thankless, but it keeps the roof over our heads. After years of doing it all alone, I've gotten used to the stillness that fills a house with only one adult. That night, I came home late from a grueling shift. I didn't have the energy to cook, clean, or even talk. I just slipped into my pajamas and crawled into bed. My son, he's 19 now, was already in his room. Maybe studying, maybe just lost in his own world. I didn't ask. Since Cullen, my husband, walked away 8 years ago, it's just been the two of us. No fights. No affairs. Just a slow fade, like morning fog burning off in the sun. I don't hate him. I don't even resent him. I just wish he'd said goodbye properly to him. My son was 11 when Cullen left. He chose to stay with me, and from that moment, we built our own world, quiet, simple, but tight-knit. We became each other's center. I was dozing off when I heard a knock. Soft. So soft I thought I imagined it. Then it came again. Mom? A whisper through the crack of the door. Low, hesitant, like he didn't want to break something fragile. That I sat up. Can't sleep? The door opened a little more. He stood there under the hallway light, eyes downcast, shoulders heavy. I just want to be close to you, he said. I patted the space beside me on the bed. Come on. He walked in like a shadow, lay on his side facing the wall. I could feel the weight on him, something more than study stress or late-night scrolling. Something unnamed. You want to talk? I asked. He shook his head. Just be here. That one sentence gripped me. He wasn't the clingy little boy anymore. He was taller than me now, his voice deeper than his father's had been at 19. But right then, he was that same child who used to curl against me during fevers or bad dreams. I reached out and stroked his hair, an old habit that came back without thought. He closed his eyes. His breathing slowed. The room was still. Not silent in a fearful way, just close. Too close. When his hand touched mine under the blanket, just lightly, I almost pulled away. But I didn't. Because I knew, we were both just looking for somewhere safe to lean. We didn't speak. We didn't embrace. But something was shifting. Quietly. Slowly. An emotion I couldn't name took root. The line between us, the line I'd always trusted, blurred. Not out of intent. Not even desire. Just proximity. Intimacy born from years of being everything to each other. In the morning, maybe things would feel normal again. Or maybe not, but that night, in our small house wrapped in mist and the hush of autumn wind, I lay still next to my son, just so neither of us would feel alone. The next morning, I woke earlier than usual. I felt damp, and not in the usual way. He was still in the house. I heard the shower running, then the creak of the bathroom door. When he walked into the kitchen, I was flipping pancakes, his favorite kind, crisp edges, thick with butter and cinnamon. Hey, honey. Hungry? I forced a smile, handing him a plate. He nodded silently and sat down, digging in. But the silence between us had changed. It wasn't the comfortable hush of yesterday. Something lingered, something we were both pretending not to see. I scrolled through my phone, eyes low. When his hand brushed mine reaching for the syrup, I froze for just a second. Then I smiled, pulling my hand back as if nothing had happened. After breakfast, we went our separate ways, him to his room, me to the dishes. But all day long, I couldn't stop replaying that moment. And the look in his eyes, not childish. Not quite grown, not romantic, but something else entirely. Later that afternoon, Avis stopped by. She's the kind of woman whose silence speaks louder than most people's noise. She used to work with me back when I started nursing. Now she runs a cozy little bookstall downtown, serving tea and advice to anyone who needs either. We sat at the kitchen table, black tea in our usual chipped mugs. A soft melody played from her tiny Bluetooth speaker. "How's your boy doing?" she asked, gently. "Same as ever," I replied, staring out the window. "Quiet. Stays up late. Studies a lot." Avis took a slow sip, then sighed. "I saw him with you the other day, head on your shoulder, on the couch. He looked sweet. But it felt long. A little too long." I blinked, surprised. She continued. Soft but firm. "You know I don't judge, Marlo. I'm a mom too. But there are lines, even with our kids. Especially when they're grown. We have to keep space between certain kinds of closeness." I didn't argue. I didn't agree either. I just whispered, "I know." She placed her hand over mine. "He's all you've got. I get it. But don't let him lean on you too much. Because when he has to leave, when it's time, you'll break." I bit my lip, tears pricking my eyes. She was right. I knew she was. That night, I didn't say anything to my son. We ate dinner, watched an old movie. Laughed at the same parts we always do. But I saw him differently. The way he leaned in when he laughed. The way his hand stayed close to mine on the armrest. The quiet, watching look he gave me when he thought I wasn't paying attention at IT. Wasn't just him who had changed. IT was me, too. Later that evening, after he'd gone upstairs, I stayed in the kitchen with a glass of white wine. An old Carole King song drifted through the air. One of those songs that took me back to being someone's wife. Back when I thought life would be simple. Predictable. Full. I missed Cullen, not the man, but the role he played. The shape of him. The balance he gave to this home. I didn't realize until now how much it had cost me, being everything to someone else. How deep the loneliness had buried itself under the routines. I remembered the day Cullen left. No big fight. No yelling. Just him on the porch, hands in his pockets. One quiet sentence, "I don't feel anything anymore, Marlo. I'm sorry." And then he was gone. All that was left was mine to carry, the grief, the house, the boy who had just begun to grow into a man. Maybe from that day on, my son and I began to create something different from what a mother and son normally share. Something born from necessity. From closeness. From years of being everything to each other, and in doing so, maybe we hadn't noticed how that bond had begun to change. The next morning, we'd see. I reminded the to call Cullen for an update on school. He was quiet for a moment, then said curtly, "I don't want to talk to him. He's still your father." I said softly, "Cullen has a right to know you're okay." They looked at me, his eyes dark. "He didn't care about you when you were sick, when the house leaked and mom couldn't sleep because she couldn't afford to fix the heater. Who was there for mom, who picked you up from your bad dreams, not him." I was stunned. I knew he was angry with his father. But I had never seen him jealous of the past. That afternoon, as I was packing things in the garage, the phone rang. It was Leora, their's ex-girlfriend. I was surprised she was polite, her voice soft. "Miss Marlo, I just wanted to ask, is there okay? He hasn't texted me since we broke up. He hasn't responded to any of my letters, texts. I'm a little worried." I took a breath. "I didn't do anything wrong, Leora. Just maybe your son isn't ready to let anyone in. He's an introvert." "Yeah. Booty, just have this feeling. He doesn't want anyone else in except you." Leora's voice trailed off. That night while I was cooking, they walked into the kitchen, leaned against the doorframe, hands in his pockets. "You're talking to Leora, Mom?" I didn't turn around, just nodded. "You should." Replied to her. After all, we loved each other. They fell silent, then moved closer, lowering his voice. "I don't want anyone else to come in, Mom." I turned back, meeting his gaze. His eyes were deep, his voice calm, but there was something surreal there. "I feel you're the only one who understands me, and I don't need anyone else." My heart clenched. "But you can't be everything," I said, my voice low, almost prayerful. He looked at me for a long moment. "What if I don't want anyone but you?" I didn't answer right away. In my heart, the question was like a small knife, not bleeding, but stabbing deep. That night, as we sat watching the movie, I didn't feel as comfortable as before. The head resting on my shoulder was no longer carefree. The hand placed near mine on the chair was no longer random. The silence that stretched between us was no longer a break, but something waiting to explode. I couldn't name that feeling, and I was afraid that I would be wrong, even if only in my thoughts. Our bond was no longer as pure as before, and the cruelest thing was we both knew. We didn't mention that night. Neither of us said anything wrong, but the distance between me and the physically close had begun to widen in my mind, and more alarmingly, it had begun to show in His eyes. 3 days later I called Cullen, not because I missed him and certainly not because I needed him, but because I thought they needed some anchor other than me. He answered on the third ring, his voice as noncommittal as before, but polite. How are you, Marlo? Finey, I called about there. He's home, he's doing well, but I thought you should see him. There was a pause, and then Cullen said, I'm not sure he wants to see you. I exhaled, maybe, but he's still my son. Will left it at that. A simple call, no emotion, no open-endedness, but when I hung up and turned around I saw there standing there. How long had he been there? His gaze on me wasn't angry, not questioning, there was just something different, as if I had betrayed some unspoken understanding between us. Do you still talk to him? His voice was soft, not accusatory, that made me feel worse. Sometimes. Just to check in on me. He nodded slowly. I thought you didn't need anyone else. The words fell into the air like a pebble dropped into a still lake. I didn't know how to respond. I didn't dare. That night, as we watched the movie, there sat closer to me than usual. Sometimes he turned to look at me, his eyes long and thoughtful. When the movie ended I stood up to clear the dishes, but he touched my arm lightly, just enough to make me stop. Do you remember when we were stuck in the car in the snow that year? Yes. When the car died I slept in your arms all night, and in the morning my hair was slightly frozen. He smiled, a distant smile. That day I thought if the world were to end, just having you hold me would be enough. I turned away, hiding my eyes. That was when I was a little girl, and now she asked. I didn't answer. The next morning I saw Leora again, this time in person, at the little bakery where she worked on the weekends. I hadn't meant to stop by, but when I saw the familiar curly hair through the glass door, I walked in as if drawn by something from afar. She smiled at me, a genuine, slightly sad smile. Miss Marlo. Hello, Leora. How are you? Fine. I just think about the sometimes. I nodded. He thinks about me too, but he doesn't know how to show it. Leora looked at me, hesitating. Can I ask you the truth? I looked up, feeling like I knew what was coming. I don't know, but I have a feeling that they doesn't let anyone near him because he's devoted himself to one person. And is that you? I stood there for a moment, stunned, the question spoken by a 20-year-old girl in the midday sun amid the smell of pastries and melted butter rang like a bell in my chest. I left the bakery that day with my head spinning. Leora hadn't said anything wrong, nor had she made any accusations. She had just pointed out something I had avoided, that they had put me in a position where no one else could step in, and the scariest thing was I had let it happen that evening. As he was putting away books in the living room, I emerged from his room holding a cup of tea. He sat down across from me, saying nothing. We were silent for a long moment before he asked softly, have you ever thought that if things had been different would you have been happier? I looked up, trying to understand. You mean if you hadn't gotten divorced? They shook his head. No, I mean if you hadn't been alone, if you had someone besides me. I put down the book and looked into his eyes. I've never felt like you were a burden, son, but do you see me as a support? He asked without blinking. I didn't answer. I couldn't. After he went back to his room I sat alone for a long time on the table under a pile of forgotten textbooks. I found an old leather notebook, the kind of music book where he used to jot down impromptu melodies with the black ink pen I had given him 2 Christmases ago. I didn't intend to read it, but my hand opened. Ida's. If the answer I was avoiding was there, there was a song unfinished called The One Who Always Remains. The melody was simple, a few notes scattered, but the lyrics made me freeze. You are the first crack, the palm that held me when everything fell apart. You are not a lover, not a mother, not anything I can call by name. You are the place I cannot leave, but I dare not stay forever. I closed the book. My heart was pounding. The feeling wasn't terror but recognition. They are no longer looked at me with the eyes of a child, and I no longer had the innocence of a mother around him. We had lived so long in a world of just the two of us where everything was compressed: emotions, loneliness, the desire to be heard, that neither of us knew where the boundaries were anymore. That night, as I got into bed, I heard a soft knock. Come in, I said without asking. The door opened and there walked in. His eyes were no longer hesitant, but there was no imposition. There was only one thing: honesty. I can sleep, he said. I nodded. I know. He sat down on the edge of the bed, his hands on the blanket. There was a long silence before he said softly, I know this shouldn't be, but I can't pretend it's not happening. I don't feel this way about anyone else, only about you. I swallowed, my heart tightening. They interrupted me very gently. I am not asking for permission. I'm not expecting you to answer. I just need you to know. I put my hand on his for the first time. I took the initiative, not to encourage you but to say I understand. You are the most beautiful thing in my life, I said, and that's why I won't let anything ruin you. He nodded. There were no tears, no drama, just the two of us sitting together in a very real silence where love and boundaries collided like 2 waves in opposite directions. We didn't lie next to each other that night. He went back to his room and I lay awake staring at the ceiling, acknowledging for the first time that there are feelings that, if not placed in the right place, can become something that makes people no longer recognize themselves for a while. Everything was as still as a lake in the early morning after that night there, and I kept a more natural distance. No more unconscious touches, no more lingering glances, but nothing really happened. We just took a step back, stood still in that space, both pretending That it was enough. Then came Saturday night. I was folding laundry when the phone rang, an unfamiliar number. My intuition sent ackle down my spine from the first ring. Marlo Gray, a woman's voice said when I picked up. Yes, we're calling from the downtown emergency room. Your son there, Gray, has just been admitted. Minor car accident. He's conscious, not in danger, but needs immediate medical attention. I dropped the shirt I was folding, my heart pounding like someone was squeezing my chest, all my emotions shattered in one breath. He could be gone, and I didn't know. I arrived at the hospital in 18 minutes, but it felt like 18 years when I ran into the cold, bright hallway and saw there, sitting on the hospital bed with a white bandage wrapped around his forehead. I didn't have time to think. I held him, holding him tight, unable to say a word. He didn't push me away. He just whispered, "I'm fine, Mom," in a voice that shook slightly, which he tried to hide. I didn't feel any pain, but tears welled up uncontrollably. Not because they was hurt, but because I felt like I was about to lose the most important thing in my life again. The doctor said it was just a superficial wound, needed a few hours of observation, and could go home that night. I sat by his bedside holding his hand, as I had when he was a baby, grateful and scared. Avis arrived a few minutes later carrying coffee and a direct look. She sat next to me in the hallway as they fell asleep on the painkillers. "You're shaking," she said, handing me the coffee. I took it with both hands. I thought I was going to lose him. I whispered, my eyes never leaving the hospital door. Avis sat still for a moment, then said, her voice low and steady, "No, you're more afraid of losing something than your child." I turned. She didn't look at me, just continued, "I saw the way you looked at him. It wasn't the way I looked at my child, or any mother would look at her child. You may not have done anything wrong, but you're drifting in that direction." I started to protest, but my throat tightened and I realized she was right. When they woke up, I helped him up to drink some water. His hand was around my shoulder, squeezing gently, the gesture normal with a lover. To me it was shattering. I brought him home around midnight. It was raining lightly. We didn't talk much. When I tucked him in my hand, lingered on his shoulder longer than it should have. They looked at me, Heisey's soft and expectant. I leaned down intending to kiss his forehead, but my lips stopped mid-sentence, inches from his skin, and then I pulled back, straightened up, and tucked my hands into my coat pockets. "Go to sleep, Mommy's in the next room," I said quickly and turned away. I didn't cry that night, but I didn't sleep. I just lay there, eyes open in the dark, listening to the rain and my heartbeat erratic, uncontrolled. I began to think, what would I do if one day there no longer saw me as his mother? The next morning we had breakfast as usual, but no one touched each other. No one talked about the accident. No one mentioned the night before. There was silence between us. Avis didn't return my text. "I think you need time or distance, or both. I don't blame you. I'm just starting to get scared of myself." 3 days after the accident, Thayer returned to his normal routine, at least on the surface. He studied, ate on time, helped me clean up, even took the trash out to the backyard without being asked. But something had changed. He stopped touching me. He stopped sitting close on the sofa. He stopped looking into my eyes as long as he used to, and that made me uneasy. One afternoon, as I was watering the plants on the porch, there came out, hands in his pockets, the pale sunlight catching his slightly tousled hair. "Are you busy, Mom?" I put down the watering can. "No, what's wrong?" He was quiet for a moment, then he said very slowly, "I talked to someone, a therapist at school." I was a little startled, but I didn't let it show. "Because of the accident?" "No, because I felt like I was going off track emotionally, about you, about everything." His voice broke on the word "you." I stepped closer softly. "And what did she say to you?" There smiled faintly. "She said you weren't crazy, that sometimes emotional turmoil is the body's way of protecting itself from loss, that too much attachment can become a kind of dependency." I nodded. "I think she was right." She looked at me. "Have you ever felt anything like me?" I didn't answer right away. I looked down at my muddy shoes, then up at the eyes that were pleading for the truth from me. "Yes," I said, as quiet as the wind. "I have, but I never wanted it to happen. And I'm still trying not to let it grow." Thayer nodded. His eyes weren't angry, just steady. "V can lead all my appointments with other people. You know I can't open up to anyone because I feel like I'm betraying you." I sat down on the steps, my heart sinking. "I didn't betray anything. You didn't belong to me that way, and I don't belong to you that way. Our love is secured, but it can't be a chain." He sat down next to me, not touching, just silent. "Can you come with me to my next session?" they asked after a long moment. "I don't think I can untangle myself without you in the room." I looked at him, nodding. "Maybe I need to heal too." The treatment room was small and simple. The chairs were upholstered in gray velvet, the lights were soft yellow, and the scent of peppermint oil hung in the air. The counselor was named Shelley, in her 50s. With a soft but steady gaze she shook our hands with both hands, then sat down in the chair opposite. "I thank you both for having the courage to come here," Shelley said, looking at us in turn. "Not everyone has the strength to enter a space as honest as this." We sat next to each other, not touching, but close enough to hear each breath. Shelley started with simple questions, how she had been feeling lately, changes since the accident, family bonds. It all seemed like polite conversation until they said, almost in a whisper, "I think I don't know you as my mother anymore." I turned to look at her, but Shell raised her hand slightly, signaling me not to answer. "Can you elaborate?" she asked. "I grew up in a world where there was only my mother," they continued after My father left, she was the only one there. When I was in pain, she was my medicine. When I was down, she was my wall. When I was lonely, she was my everything. But little by little I didn't know how to love anyone else. Almy first emotions everything. I learned about attachment, it came from her. I felt a part of me collapse, not from shock, but from understanding. Shelley turned to Mems. Marlo, what do you think? When you hear this? I swallowed, then said softly, I feel guilty. I've been the best mother I could be, but maybe I've put my son in a place he shouldn't have been. Shelley nodded, waiting for me to continue. I was lonely, not in the sense of needing a man, but in the sense of needing someone to see me, and there he always saw me. He saw me as a person, not just a mother. I didn't ask for that, but I didn't push him away. When I needed him, I let that closeness stay because I needed it too. No one spoke for a few seconds, then they put his hands on his knees, squeezed them tightly. I don't want to hurt you, but if I don't leave, I think we'll both be consumed. Shelley looked at me, then said, it's not a bad feeling, it's a natural consequence of being so deeply attached so long in loneliness, but if two people want to keep this love intact, they need to create a healthy distance. I nodded, my eyes stung. I took the hand for the first time in days. I have to go away from you for a while so we can both live independently of each other. I nodded, I know and I will, but not because I don't need you anymore, but because I need to be myself apart from you. The session ended in a knowing silence. No one cried, no one was angry. There was only agreement, a pact act between two souls that had come too close to the edge that night. As I packed There's room for an upcoming trip and exchange semester in Vermont, I found a folded piece of paper tucked into a notebook. It was handwritten, you are where I always come back to, but if I stay inside you I will never learn to walk, and I know you want me to learn that. I folded the paper and put it in my pocket, then I sat down on his bed. The room would be empty in a few days, and for the first time I cried, not because of the pain, but because I was letting love live its own life. Vermont greeted with a light snow and pale gray skies. I'd read everything about it: quaint college campuses, quiet small towns, independent bookstores, and cozy coffee shops, all of which seemed like good places to start over. We didn't call it a breakup, just time apart, but there and I both knew it wasn't just about physical distance, it was about rebuilding boundaries, resetting the first bricks of a relationship we wanted to keep intact. The night before he left it rained, not hard, just enough to fog up the windows and make the quiet footsteps in the kitchen sound longer than usual. I was washing dishes when they walked in holding an old pillow and a thin blanket, both of which had been his since he was 12. I can't sleep, he said, as if we were back to that first night after Cullen left. I nodded, no need to ask. I wheeled her upstairs. Without turning on the light in the dimness, I pulled the covers up to the bed and she lay down beside me. She had hundreds of nights before no one touched anyone, no one spoke. There was only the soft patter of rain on the tin roof and the steady heartbeats of the two people lying next to her. Were you afraid? They asked after a long pause. I turned to her. Afra, afraid that you would leave and then not need me anymore? The question was not reproachful, just honest sadness. I answered slowly, and no, I am afraid that you will stay and then not be able to need anyone but me. Another long silence, then she said so softly that I almost missed her, you are the first person I have ever loved, but I don't want that love to make you lonely, or I couldn't hold it in any longer. I reached out and touched her hair, not as a mother, not as a woman, but as a person saying goodbye to a part of her soul. You are the most beautiful thing in my life, but I don't want you to be the thing that makes me forget who I am. The next morning I drove there to the airport. The flight was at 6:25. It was still dark, the street lights reflected off the windshield like streaks of light drifting across it. We didn't talk much. Occasionally, I saw her glance at me through the rearview mirror. As for me, I just stared straight ahead. When I stopped in front of the domestic terminal, Thier unbuckled his seatbelt, his hands still in his lap as if he didn't want to open the door. I'm writing you a letter, he said, pulling a white envelope from his pocket. Don't read it yet, wait until we get home. I nodded. I took the letter, didn't open it, just squeezed his hand tightly. Go, I said, trying to keep my voice from shaking. Find the part of me that I lost when I was with you for so long. She nodded. There were no tears, but as she turned to leave, I saw her shoulders shake slightly. I sat in the car for a long time after she got in, didn't start the car, didn't cry, just opened the envelope, pulled out the letter. Even though she told me to, the letter was handwritten in blue ink, the words slanted like her mom. I used to think that love was about possessing, holding on, not letting go, but from you I learned that love is knowing when to step back, knowing where the boundaries are to protect what is sacred. You're not just Amam, you're the only person who's ever seen me, really seen me when I was nothing, and that's why I had to learn to leave you to know who I am. Apart from your love, I'm not leaving, just go away so that when I return I can stand before you as someone strong enough, unique enough to love you properly. My son. There I folded the letter. The wind blew through the cracks in the glass door, cold and real, but for the first time in many years, I did not feel empty. I felt light, like I had just set a large stone in the ground. After carrying it for so long, I turned the car around. The way home was the same familiar curves, the old gas station, Leora's bakery with its lights on, but inside me something had changed. There was no longer by my side, but there was no longer the Fear of losing him because now I knew there are loves that are only true when set free. 5 years have passed like a quiet river, not forgetting but accepting I still live in the same house in Asheville, now renovated, a new roof, a painted front door. Lavender plants on the porch, little things, but they make the space seem less haunted. They didn't come back. He visited on holidays, calling regularly, sending pictures of trips, classes, a new girlfriend, a redhead named June, a humanities major who played guitar and liked to be quiet like him. I never pressed too hard. I learned that some things should be told when people are ready. That morning, like every Friday, I made coffee and sat on the front porch reading. The sky was calm, birds chirped in the distance, leaves rustled. When I went out to get the mail, there was an ivory envelope, no postmark. Someone had left it in the mailbox, the familiar handwriting. I sat down on the wooden chair, put the coffee cup aside, and opened the letter. Mom, today is exactly 5 years since the morning you saw me off at the airport. I remember it clearly. You were wearing a gray coat, no makeup, but your eyes were as bright as the time I learned to walk without falling. I am not writing this letter to remind you of what happened. I am writing to tell you about everything that has grown since then. You once said that true love is loving enough knowing when to step back. Over the past 5 years I have understood the meaning of that more than any lesson in school. No one but you has given me a love strong enough to make me want to step away from it, and gentle enough to make me want to come back when I am strong enough. I used to think that I loved you in the wrong way, but I understand now. It's not wrong, but the lack of a model to name the feeling. You and I were so close, the lines blurred, but that love put back in place saved us both. Now I love someone and I don't feel like I'm betraying you. On the contrary, I'm doing what you did for me, patient, faithful, not abandoning. June knows everything, not in detail, but enough to understand, and she doesn't leave. She says, I know you love because you learned how to love from your mother. Mom, I've never blamed you if anything. It's only myself for holding on to you so tightly, but I think I had to go through it to grow up. I'm getting married, small, no parties, but I want you to come, not just as a mother, but as the first person to teach me how to love with limits. Your son. Then I put the letter down, my hand tightening around my coffee cup. The sun was higher now, casting a warm yellow glow down the steps. I didn't cry, there was no need. There was a light silence in my heart, no longer a burden, but a space. Everything that had happened was still there. Not erased, not denied, but it was folded, placed in the drawer of memory like an old handkerchief, once soaked with tears, but now dry. I got up, went into the house, opened a drawer, and took out the old wooden box. In it were all the letters there had ever written to me, from the Mother's Day card in crooked handwriting when he was 8 to the note he had left when he left for Vermont. I placed the latest letter in there neatly, then I called him. The call lasted only a few minutes. I didn't say anything grand, just mommy's coming and I'm so proud of you. They didn't answer right away. I heard her breathing on the other end of the line, steady, no longer shaking. Thank you, Mom, she said, for everything and for knowing when to stop. That night I sat on the porch again. The moon was high, the wind was gentle. On the table next to me was an old photo album, a picture of a 4-year-old Threer hugging me around the neck in his gray coat, his face smeared with whipped cream, smiling brightly. I stared at the photo for a long time, then I said softly to myself, we held on to that good thing even if we had to let go. If you stayed until the end of this story, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Not everyone is willing to listen to a journey that is not easy to name, not easy to judge, but you stayed quietly, gently, the way people sit together on a late afternoon, saying nothing, simply being present. My story isn't perfect, it has gone through quiet and painful turns, but it is the fact that it is being told and heard that makes it lighter. Thank you for not leaving, thank you for understanding, or at least trying to understand, team.